All right, hello, here we are again to do another follow-up video. This will be video part 3 on this Chrysler Town & Country. It's a 2008. I think I called it a 2010 just to clear that up, but same crap. 2008, 2010, nothing changes. It's all the same. Prior videos, for those that haven't watched them, the EGR exhaust gasket was messed up. Valve covers were slobby, dirty, nasty. So we went in here to change valve covers mainly, but when you're going to go in here to do valve covers, you're going to end up doing an intake gasket, end up doing a lower intake gasket. So that's what you're looking at here. And then the spark plugs themselves were replaced, and let me tell you, those spark plugs were covered in oil, like thick oil. I'll show you the back ones. And so everything's nice and clean back here. The whole entire engine's been cleaned. See how clean it is, front and back. That motor mount back there was replaced, the one that goes in the back. So you got to remove this heat shield. It has a bolt that hides right there on the top, and then one down here on the side. You remove the heat shield, you lift it up from the top, and then you remove the motor mount. You have access to the motor mount side bolt and the 4 bolts that hold it down, 2 in the back over there, 2 over here. You have to kind of rock the engine and play with it to get everything to line up and have it go back in. The same with the motor mount on the bottom. I'll show you them over here. I have them removed from the vehicle. This is how they were in the condition that they were in. So you can see they were clearly torn all the way through. If you look at this side, yeah, they were like pretty well ripped up. That's the one for the front, and then this is the one for the back. It actually sits in this position, back of the vehicle, front of the vehicle, right? So you have the 2 bolts here, and then you have the 2 bolts in the back, and then you have that heat shield that I just showed you that comes over here to protect the rubber in this mount from the exhaust that runs pretty close to this. And I'll show you the condition of this one. You can see it was pretty ripped up, pretty torn up, man. Yeah, so your bolt hole goes through there in the middle, long bolt hole, and then, like I said, the 4 bolts on the sides. This was the original one, never been replaced. 170,000 miles on those. They had never been replaced. These are the spark plugs. I'll show you these guys over here. Look at that, man. Talk about bad, like just bad. And those are the original spark plugs, and everything was leaking on them. They were just in real rough shape. So we definitely put some brand new Champion spark plugs in there. Those are the 3 that were in the front of the motor, and these are the 3 that were in the back of the motor. See if this little phone will focus so y'all can see that. Yeah, they were pretty bad. They were done. Might be able to read this one. Yeah, it looks like an OEM Chrysler plug, that's for sure. Nothing aftermarket. These are the bolts for the valve cover gaskets. So the valve cover gaskets, we had bought a brand new valve cover gasket set, and it came with all the new little grommets that will go on the bolts. But then what happened was, the front valve cover gasket, that's the one you pour oil in the front of the engine, was in good condition and it was able to come off. I cleaned it very thoroughly, as you can see. It's like brand new. And I'll be putting a gasket on that and putting that back on and putting the breather hose that goes to the air box back on there. The back valve cover gasket that goes to the back of the engine, that's a different story, y'all. Like that one, had to be replaced. And the reason why is because the front valve cover gasket sits right here in the front. Yes, it's by the exhaust manifold, but you keep in mind you also have the big fan that's always blowing to keep this cool. And it's towards the front. You get a lot of air coming in from the road when you're driving. So this stays a lot cooler, a lot more access to it. Now the valve cover in the back, completely different story. You don't have a fan back here. What you have back here is the catalytic converter very, very close to the actual valve cover in this compartment. That's why they make these heater hoses aluminum, because if they were rubber all the way across, that catalytic converter would straight melt the rubber. Somebody replaced these at some point already and decided to leave the old clamps rattling on there. Half-assed mechanic work. Probably the same mechanic that left the EGR gasket bad, but whatever. The point is, staying on topic, that catalytic converter gets cherry red hot, and then all the heat that's buried in under here doesn't get a bunch of air coming in from the highway. It's tucked back in there, and keep in mind this is all built up with the lower intake, upper intake, kind of blocking all that, making that like a little cave back in there that's very isolated, and all that heat being produced from this front exhaust manifold, running the exhaust gases down this side pipe right here all the way into this manifold. And then this manifold not only is expelling the exhaust gaskets from this bank, from this head into the catalytic converter, but it's also expelling the exhaust gases from the front bank, from this exhaust manifold. They get channeled right into it from the front this way. That's a design that I just think Chrysler did a really good job with these vans, but I think they could have done something different as far as running this exhaust manifold down the bottom instead of up over the top of the transmission. They put a heating pad under here. You see it there on the transmission to kind of keep the transmission from getting too hot from this exhaust manifold running on it. And like, I just think that was like one hell of a cheap ass shortcut Chrysler did when they put these things together. They could have totally ran an exhaust manifold down this way towards the back, and then this exhaust manifold and that exhaust manifold, kind of like on a Nissan Quest, on a Honda Odyssey, the exhaust manifold goes down, and then it has a Y pipe underneath under the oil pan, and then that goes into the catalytic converter, instead of this exhaust manifold tying exhaust gases into that exhaust manifold. And then it's not the best engineering, if you ask me. They did cut cost. I'll tell you why they do it, on only having one catalytic converter there versus having two catalytic converters on each exhaust manifold. That's really probably the reason they do it. So like I said, it's a shortcut, and it's to be cheap. They don't want the cost of having two catalytic converters for each bank. Like a Nissan Quest, Honda Odyssey, Toyota Sienna, they'll have 3 catalytic converters, not one. The good thing about the Chrysler Town & Countries is you only have to replace one catalytic converter. The bad thing is you have other issues like melting the back valve covers. The valve cover is not that expensive, but they do get hot and they do melt fast. So you have, I'm gonna bring you back over here to be very careful if you're gonna attempt to remove one of these. Now, I've done lots of these and I've gotten really good at removing them without breaking, but sometimes I explain to the customer, no matter how good you think you are, no matter how gentle you are, no matter how many times you've done it, sometimes it's plastic, it's brittle, it gets very hot back there, and like it or not, it's gonna break. So this is your PCV valve inside of here, and if you noticed, they installed it in there already when they gave me this. They also gave it to me with a gasket already on it. Look at that. And they gave it to me even with brand new bolts already in it. So this is literally ready to just boop, plop it right on. And then this is the brand new hose, the PCV valve hose right here that you're looking at, that goes on top of the PCV, right there. Oh, wrong side, sorry, this side, like so. So that, I'll get over here so you can see it just like the other one. Put the clamp on it, and you see how this hose is like, I'll show you, brand new. It's like rubber, flexible, I can move it. Try to move this hose, like this is like hard and plastic. It's rock solid. So you'll go to remove the clamp and it's kind of baked on there, and you'll try to wiggle it and get it to lift up and off, and this will crack on you and you'll have a vacuum leak. Now, I'm really good at doing that. I've been doing this for a long time. I was able to remove that without breaking it. Let's say this van has 175,000 miles. I'm able to remove it to this point, but I still want to replace that PCV valve. PCV valve is your positive crank ventilation valve. All the crankcase pressure needs to be ventilated through this check valve, pretty much. So by not replacing that PCV valve, when it gets clogged up, you know, the crankcase pressure gets up there, and then you end up blowing out gaskets and having oil leaks. That's what his problem was. So for me to have replaced the gasket and replaced the valve cover and not replace the PCV valve inside with 175,000 miles on it that's never been replaced, he would have been right back in the same situation with these brand new Felpro quality valve cover gaskets being put on that same PCV valve and put right back on the car, and that would have ended up leaking again before long. So you always got to ask yourself, the problem is we have leaky valve cover gaskets. Why are they leaking? Well, the heat is a big factor. We live in the Sunshine State, that makes it even worse. But also that PCV valve, that positive crank ventilation valve, must be clogged, and it's not venting the way it should, like if it was a brand new one. So let's get it venting good, and let's get it going. It's kind of like when you are sick and you have a cold and you're kind of talking like this, like you can't, you're struggling to breathe because your nose is all stuffed up. Yeah, that sucks, right? And then you can breathe again and you're clear, and you're like, you go back outside, fresh air. I forgot what that's like. Well, that's how your engine feels. Your engine feels like that. Your engine is like, fresh air. Man, the sun's like really in my face. And you can breathe clear again. So this engine is no longer like this now. It has a brand new PCV valve. So it's going to be like, once I start it up, like, I can breathe. Yay, I love you, Danny. Thank you for doing that. So then you say, well, I need to replace my PCV valve too, Danny. I get it. How do I replace my PCV valve without that breaking? I'm telling you, it is impossible. They're not built to be removed. Now, you might have some badass uncle or mechanic, or maybe yourself, that was able to get one out. Is it impossible? No, but it's damn near impossible. Like, good luck. Like, standing applause if you can do it. It's very hard. Like, I've done lots. I've tried to get them out. So far, I've only been able to get one out. Only one I've ever been able to get out. The rest crack or break the valve cover as you're trying to pull them out. I'll show you. They're set in place right here. And the PCV valve just doesn't sit in the plastic. It has a rubber around it. And then the rubber sits in the valve cover. And then the PCV valve sits in the rubber. So that rubber gets hardened. Like this hose got hardened inside the plastic, and it bakes into the plastic. And you'll try to go remove this, and you'll have this all smashed up, grabbing it with pliers, needle nose, whatever you do, you lube it. I mean, what are you going to do? Heat the plastic? It's plastic. You're going to melt it. You can't heat it. So like, you're just trying to finagle it out little by little. And what I try to do is break up the rubber without breaking the plastic. Because when you buy the PCV valve, if you're able to do that and get it out, like I said, I did it one time, then you can, the new PCV valve will have the new rubber on it, lube it, put it back in. And yes, it's possible. I did it once myself, but I honestly think I got lucky. I've never been able to do it again. Every other time I try to remove these, this plastic one, the cracking or splitting in the process of working that hardened rubber out to get this PCV valve out. So you might as well plan to buy a brand new valve cover every time you're going to do this job. Now, I don't like telling people that. I say, let me at least give it a chance and see if I'll be able to. In this case, I'll tell you why I didn't even try to remove this PCV valve. I'll push that back there, and I'll show you here why. So here's the one that came off the vehicle. I was able to remove it, get all the bolts out, and I was able to get the gasket out without having a problem. Well, look what happened right here. Let me see if the sun is not being nice to me today. You see where the gasket goes in? It snapped off a piece of the actual valve cover gasket there. And all I was doing was pulling the gasket out. And when it pulled out, the plastic pulled out with the gasket, just crumbled. So look at this valve cover. This is the front, And this is the back where it cracked right there, you see? So this is placed towards the exhaust, towards the back of the engine, where the catalytic converter is just right here. I'll show you in the vehicle. So this is placed in this position right here. Funny it didn't crack here in the front where it gets a little ventilation. It cracked back here in the back by the exhaust. Right there. And that just came right off. Like, just when I pulled the gasket off, the gasket was hardened and I was pulling it out and a piece of it just came out with this. Now I wedged it and played with it and little by little was getting it out, and I was spraying penetration fluid in there to get it to cooperate and want to come out. And I was on a roll. I was literally on a roll. And when I got to that part, I wasn't even pulling hard and the plastic just boom, like, look at me, but don't touch me because I'm going to break no matter what you do. And sometimes that's just where you're at. It's just going to break no matter what you do. So don't be mad at yourself. It's just a bad design on this exhaust system from Chrysler Town & Country. I love these engines. They're built very well. They're push rod motors. They're not dual overhead cam motors. They're like, you know, a push rod motor with a cam down in the valley, one cam, and push rods and lifters. So I like that about them, and they make very good automatic transmissions, way better than the transmission in a Honda Odyssey. I just wish they would have copied the Japanese and not been cheap and did the 3 catalytic converters, one on this side, one on that side, and ran it out to the third one, instead of running the exhaust up and over the transmission. I think that would have been the better design, but like I said, they cut corners to cut cost, and that's just a poor design they did on this vehicle. So now they're known for valve cover failure. They're plastic. I mean, if they were going to do this, they could have at least sprung the money to get an aluminum valve cover, right? Because if this was aluminum, I could totally take this off and dig that PCV valve out of there and not break it because it's aluminum. But they're plastic. Again, they're cutting cost again. They could have made an aluminum valve cover, and you wouldn't have this issue. So now that you understand, if you own a Chrysler Town & Country, why you're going to want to have a new valve cover every time you do it, because it's almost a guaranteed it's going to crack. And even if it doesn't crack there when you pull the gasket off, even if it doesn't crack anywhere else and it's no cracks and you could put a whole new gasket and put it back, how are you going to get that PCV valve out without cracking it here? You're not. You're just going to put it back with the same PCV valve. Well, get ready to have high positive crank ventilation pressure and be leaking from that gasket before you know it again. So you're not fixing, you might have put a band-aid on it to buy yourself more time until it does it again, but you're not fixing the root of the problem, which is new PCV valve. 175,000 miles on this motor. PCV valve's never been replaced. It's like a $5 item, but because of the design, Chrysler, where this is at, that's the situation. Now, what else could Chrysler have done? Here's another thing. The PCV valve is on the back side where it's hot. They could have put the PCV valve on the front valve cover. This one. See, the back one has the PCV, the front one doesn't. They could have put the PCV valve on the front where it's next to the radiator fan and gets cooled down. And they could have left just this vacuum port on the back valve cover. Let that get heated up, you know? So at the end of the day, I think these people ain't dumb. Like, they clearly know what they're doing, and they know it's going to make money, and they're going to sell a lot of valve covers on these cars. And that's exactly what they do. You know, it wouldn't have got melted, and you'd be able to replace a PCV valve much more easier here than back there. They don't care. So what do? You go to Chrysler, you go to Mopar, you go to the dealership, right? And you get yourself a brand new valve cover, and it comes just like this with the bolts and the gasket and the PCV valve and everything. Now you want to ask for the PCV valve hose separate. The hose and the valve cover and the bolts and the piece this whole setup right here, this and this, was special ordered. It had to be overnighted from somewhere else. They're most likely not going to just have it sitting in stock on a shelf. So buy that, wait for it to arrive, and then do the job. But $170, I think that's what it costs. Yeah, $170 for the hose and that. You live in a different state, Yours was a little more, a little less. Good for you. But that's what I paid. That you can use that as a point of reference, as a ballpark. So yeah, that's where we're at. Just wanted to educate people on this because I think it's something that I don't see talked or explained on YouTube. I know there's a lot of Chrysler Town and Country people that own them and are fond of them and love them. My girl had one for years, raised her kids on it, loved it, swear by it. I owned one. I've rebuilt these motors, sold them. Like I think this is honestly one of the best minivans. Is it perfect? No. Another issue they have is heater hoses. This one was replaced here already, but I'll show you over here. You see these heater hose couplings? This goes, believe it or not, to this adapter, to this aluminum pipe that runs all the way down there to the water pipe going to the water pump. And all this plastic stuff here always breaks on you. It's plastic, right? Again, cutting corners, being cheap with plastic. So they clearly replaced this one, which was permanently like sealed like this one with no clamps, and they put this plastic elbow on them. Now that fixed it, don't get me wrong, but they sell one, for those of you that want to spend a little more and really get it done right, they sell one that has this little Y connector in aluminum. That's usually the one I buy when I do it. Somebody else did this one and went with the cheaper plastic one. You see this hose insulation? Look at it. It's not holding up anymore. That should be on there like so. Could have been zip tied, it could have been taped. I mean, this one's clearly seen better days, right? You see? I'm trying to one-hand it back on while I'm holding the phone. Okay, so that's supposed to go like that. And you see it's pretty much broken off and melted. And the same with this one up here. So it needs new insulators. Now, this is important because look how close it runs to the exhaust. Here's your exhaust EGR. Here's your exhaust manifold. There's your catalytic converter. So this is very close, and like I said, hardly any air gets back in here. This is all, when the hood is closed, step back so you can get a different view. When the hood is closed, that intake is pretty close to up to here, and that is not even visible back there. And you get very little air in there. All the hot air of this pipe also runs, look, very close to it. This will come right up here attached to your intake, and it's under a lot of heat. That's why that Y always goes bad, from the heat of this. That's why you want to get it in aluminum. He'll end up having to replace this again before long. He would have got the aluminum, he would have been done once and for all, and I would have made him buy both. I would have bought this one and that one. Why replace just this one? And then what? Wait for the same thing to happen to that one? It's inevitable. It's about to happen. It's called preventative maintenance for a reason. Do it before it happens. You think you're costing the customer more money. In reality, you're saving them money because their time is valuable. They don't want to have the car in the shop again for the same thing after he already had the car in the shop for this. And also think of where he might be when it fails, and the tow truck, and what it's going to cost to even get it to a shop. So once you get it in the shop, don't replace one heater hose connection. Replace them both. And know that he's done with that. And put the aluminum ones in there, you know, and then he's set and he's good to go. But, you know, not all mechanics operate with the same mentality. Some just want to band-aid stuff and make a little bit of money and give people their car back. I'm not one of those. I like to set people up to where I do that job. I do it one time and they never need to come back and see me for that job. It was done thoroughly and diligently. So heater hose, if you do them right, do them both at the same time. Get the aluminum one, not the plastic one. That's the flaw of the Chrysler Town and Country. Really, this exhaust design is definitely a flaw. And the deciding to put the PCV valve in the back valve cover instead of the front is a flaw. Deciding not to do aluminum valve covers versus plastic is definitely a flaw. Like I said, there's no perfect car. Having said all this, I want to end the video in saying I still love Chrysler Town and Countries. I love them. Like I honestly think, like, I'm not a minivan guy. I don't need a minivan. I don't want a minivan. But if I had to have a minivan for my family, it would be a Chrysler Town and Country. And it wouldn't be the new Pacificas with the 3.6 Penn Star motors. I know people rave about those. They're decent motors, don't get me wrong, but these are a little more easy to work on. This is a push start motor. I could do a whole nother video on the 3.6 Penn-Star motor that they shop in Jeep Wranglers and Pacificas and Durangos and just freaking Challengers and Chargers. Everything Dodge Chrysler makes, they've shoved that 3.6 Penn-Star motor in it. The motor has a lot of good things. I'm not gonna rag it, but it has one flaw that I really don't like about it. They put the oil cooler housing right in the middle and between the valleyway, like right in the middle of the motor. So you see this motor doesn't have no oil cooler housing there. If this was a Penn-Star 3.6, the oil cooler housing would sit right in here. And they get hot depending on the design of the car. Like the Pacificas and the minivans, they get even hotter because of the way the body of the car is built around it, and they're nice and tight. Now in a Durango with a lot more space, and a Dodge Ram with a Penn-Star, a little easier. But if you look at my video, I have on my channel, I have a video where I do a Dodge Ram with a 3.6 Penn-Star lifted and everything, and I replaced the oil filter cooler housing. It was actually leaking from in between the alleyway down the sides of the transmission, and had us thinking it was actually a transmission leak when it wasn't a transmission leak. The transmission was covered in oil, and it was from the oil cooler, oil housing gasket. So I've seen that happen a lot with these. I've done a lot as they get higher up in mileage. Those Penn-Star motors, they're all failing from there. So that's like, I would say, the Achilles heel of that engine. I remember how expensive that was. It's a lot more than buying a valve cover. I think these motors, push rod motors, non-dual overhead cam motors, I think these motors are a lot stronger and healthier. These transmissions on these Chrysler Town & Countries have proven to be solid. Some of like the 2013-14 Jeep Wranglers have this 3.8 in them in a rear wheel drive horizontal, not horizontal, but longitudinal like design, the way they install it. I have a customer that has one of those too, in a manual 4-wheel drive. I really like this motor. I've seen it there. It's a very respectable motor. He's got it lifted on big 35s, and it pulls that Jeep around with no problem. This little 3.8. So these 3.8s have a lot of potential. I've seen some videos online, even people turboing them and running them hard at the track, and these motors hold, man. I'm not gonna compare it to an LS motor quality, but I mean, for a V6, I would say it's like, you know, the bastard cousin or whatever of compared to an LS motor. It's really not that far off. If I had to choose a V6 in the Chrysler family, I'd choose this 3.8 over the Penn-Star. That's the whole point of the video. So does it have flaws? Yes. The exhaust is routed this way in the Town & Countries, not in the other models. Keep that in mind. The PCV valve on all of these 3.8s is a flaw because they're plastic valve covers. So no matter which vehicle you have your 3.8 installed in, that PCV valve is going to come back and haunt you every time. You're going to have to replace the whole valve cover. I could keep yapping, but I want to get this thing put together for y'all. I want to show you guys just the only thing I haven't shown you here is the intake. We got it all cleaned up, the lower intake. So there's your thermostat housing, your heater hose outlet coming in the back. Everything's all cleaned up. We got new fuel injector O-rings. We'll keep the same fuel injectors, obviously. The intake, upper intake, is in the car. That's the only thing I have yet to clean. We'll put that on and slap this engine back together, and it'll have brand new valve cover, brand new PCV valve. No more, oh, I'm so stuffed up for this engine. The motor mounts that we replaced are definitely going to keep the engine from rocking forward and backward every time he accelerates. Should feel like a gazillion times better when he gets this car back. I'll put it together tonight, test drive it a little tomorrow, let him come pick it up tomorrow. Thank you for watching the video. Appreciate y'all. Hope somebody got some value out of this. These videos really aren't fun, but every now and then I see something like this worth talking about, and I share it hoping it'll help someone and add some value. So God bless y'all. Thanks for watching. Catch you on another video.